I were asked to name the most beautiful melody ever written, I'd say, well, that's impossible. It's too subjective. But if I had to do it, I would probably say the Temple of Apollo theme from the opera The Oresteia by Sergei Taneyev, which would no doubt be greeted with stunned silence and or outright ridicule. Sergei Taneyev was and is the missing link in Russian music between Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff. A very fine composer, he was a student of Tchaikovsky's at the Moscow Conservatory and one of the very few people whose opinion Tchaikovsky trusted in evaluating his own music. He actually consulted his student Taneyev's critical opinions. Then when Taneyev joined the faculty of the conservatory, his most famous student was Sergei Rachmaninoff. So there's a great lineage here, one which has been entirely lost due to the obscurity of Taneyev's music. And there are some truly wonderful works in his output, including his fabulous piano quintet, which was recorded by an all-star lineup a few years back. But today it's Taneyev's Oresteia Overture, Opus 6, from 1889. He had completed his full opera, the Oresteia, in 1884, based on the classic Greek tragedy. You know, Orestes, the brother of Electra, their father Agamemnon is murdered by their mother Clytemnestra and her lover, and Orestes kills both of them in vengeance. Okay? And Strauss used the same legend for his opera Electra. And his opera ends at this point with the murders, and Electra goes into this frenzied dance of joy, collapses, and dies. Curtain. But Taneyev's opera essentially gives us the entire story with Agamemnon's return from the Trojan War before things get really intense. But Orestes, having much later killed both adults, one of them his mother, even though it's pretty much par for the course in terms of antiquity, he is nonetheless punished. He is pursued across the land by the Furies, these harpy-like spirit creatures who tear at him and torment him endlessly for eternity. So all Orestes can do is to keep running. But he ultimately seeks out the Temple of Apollo, and the refuge, the calm, the sanctity of the temple find expression in Taneyev's great melody, which we will soon hear. Is it the most beautiful ever written? Stay tuned. Orestes is ultimately judged and found not guilty by one vote cast by the goddess Athena, so she had some clout. Here's where things get a little confusing. Taneyev's full opera was his opus 5. It had its own prelude, about 3 minutes long. But 5 years later, in 1889, he composed this 18-minute concert overture based on themes from the opera. And the last 6 minutes of this work are devoted entirely to this glorious Apollo theme. Now, of course, for orchestra only. And that is the melody that we will focus on. The first 12 minutes of this overture are filled with darkness and gloom and violence. And the opera itself contains a major leitmotif that hovers over everything. It is this. Very dramatic. It's sort of a fate motive. Incidentally, very similar to Bizet's big fate motive in Carmen, yes? An opera that was highly regarded by Russian composers. And Taneyev's motive is used throughout the overture. Sometimes it's plaintive in the violins, or in a powerful declamation in the horns. But the main allegro of this 18-minute overture is built on this version of the motive, very quick. There's a primitive, ritualistic violence to this music, which describes the Furies in the opera, tearing and clawing viciously. A bit later, the fate motive represents the horrors of Agamemnon's palace. It's played by a muted solo violin. This is the prophetess Cassandra, who describes the vision of the ghosts of children who have been murdered in the palace. It's really ghastly stuff, and you hear it in the music. Very scary stuff. And Taneyev was an expert contrapuntist, the subject which he taught at the conservatory. He sometimes has the fate motive going at 3 different speeds simultaneously. Slowest in the bass, twice as fast above it in the brass, and twice as fast again in the high woodwinds. Ultimately, the music hurtles ahead, driven by the fate motive descending, until it collapses. And out of the gloom, the gentle sound of flutes and oboe. With radiant string harmonics and harp arpeggios. And in the opera, the gorgeous melody, this is it, is first heard in Act 2 when Orestes tells his sister Electra that the god Apollo has promised to protect him in his quest to avenge the murder of their father. And you may recall from my episode on harmony how a simple, rudimentary melody sprang to life when harmony was added to it. Well, Taneyev's melody is beauty itself, even without the harmony. As it continues to rise. But when it's harmonized, it gains an entirely new level of expression. With dissonances. It has a noble, stately character to it. And the theme repeats, as you will hear. The orchestration is more full, and yet it's more ethereal. And in this performance, you'll clearly hear the back and forth glissandos of harp and piano with glockenspiel and suspended cymbal. This is Taneyev's opulent, ancient orchestral coloring. And if it's possible for this melody to increase in beauty, it does. There's a middle section, this sequence. With this raised tonic. Ethereal flutes return. The music builds and it moves into the key of E major for a major restatement with elaborate figuration in the strings with harp and piano and full brass. In the opera, this is the final chorus praising the dawn of a new era of peace in the world. But enough of my attempts to describe it. I'll let you experience this exquisite music, the appearance of this great theme, possibly the most beautiful of all time, as it brings this work to its conclusion. I thank you in advance for watching and listening. And once again, please do all the things that we need to do on YouTube to get these videos out into the world. Like and subscribe and comment, nice comments, and share and everything. So we will have hopefully great success and a lot of views of this gorgeous, gorgeous music. Here it is now, the final 6 minutes of the Oresteia Overture by Sergei Taneyev.